From the epistle to the Hebrew church. I'm going to read one passage coming from Hebrews chapter 10, and then we'll drop down to Hebrews chapter 11. But I want to read one verse from Hebrews chapter 10, beginning at verse 38, and then we'll drop down to chapter 11, verse 13. Now, I'm reading from the King James rendering. The following verses of scripture can be found, and it reads on this wise. Now the just shall live by faith. But if any man draw back, my soul shall have no pleasure in him. Chapter 11, verse 13. It says, these all died in faith, not having received the promises, plural, but having seen them afar off, and were persuaded of them, and embraced them, and confessed that they were strangers and pilgrims on the earth. For they that say such things declare plainly that they seek a country. And truly, if they had been mindful of that country from whence they came out, they might have had opportunity to have returned. But now they desire a better country, that is, an heavenly. Wherefore God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he hath prepared for them a city. God bless you. You may be seated in the presence of the Lord, and I want to talk just a few minutes from this thought. Living to leave. Living to leave. Amen. Now, the epistle to the Hebrews does not actually name an author, but most theologians, most Christians agree that Paul, because of the language of the text, that he is in fact the writer. But even though we don't know who the actual author is, we do know what the intent of the epistle was. It was to encourage the Jewish Christians who were in danger of apostasy. And what does that mean? It means that they were in danger of falling back to their old, contrary, idolatrous ways. And so the writer would write to the Christians to encourage them to keep pushing forward, to keep moving forward, to keeping on, as we would used to say. And so he's admonishing them by letting them know that Christ is superior to any and everything that we have to deal with or go through in life. He lets us know that he was not only superior as a person, but he says we now have a high priest. And so he shows superiority as a high priest. And not only does he show superiority as a high priest, but he is superior to us in our lives. That there's no situation, there's no set of circumstances that would warrant us turning around, going back. Y'all pray with me. Now, if you're trying to go somewhere and you're moving towards your destination, and for no reason you slap it in reverse, then you will never get to your destination. If you run into a roadblock or hit a few potholes and get frustrated and say, well, I'm going to turn around and go back. But now what if you're trying to get home? If you're trying to get home, there's no amount of traffic, there's no amount of detours, there's no amount of obstacles that will stop you from getting home. Because we all know that there is no place like home. We love to visit, and we'll go and travel, and we'll reside in certain places. But after a while, when you're visiting in a strange place and the newness wears off, you have this desire to go home. Now, he's talking to the Jewish Christians, and he's letting them know that this world is not really our home. And he uses all of these great patriarchs and all of these Old Testament saints to serve as an example of people who have lived by faith. And he says, now the just shall live by faith. He says, but now if any man draw back, if any man has a desire to go back to a faithless life, he says, my soul cannot have pleasure in that. In fact, it is impossible for us to please God without faith. And faith is simply just trusting and believing that God is able to do exceedingly abundantly above and beyond anything that we can ask or think. I ask you this morning, is there anything too hard for God? If your answer is yes, then you have a faith problem. I'm almost finished. And so he admonishes them to move forward. Now, when we get to verse 13, it would seem like it's kind of a sad situation because he says, these all died, but they died in faith. And when they died in faith, it says they had not yet received the promise. They died before the promise could be fulfilled. But it says they seen it from afar off. Oh, I think y'all missed that. They didn't actually obtain it physically, but they saw it spiritually. And sometimes before God will let something manifest in your life in the natural, you've got to see it in the spiritual. I don't have it yet, but I can see it. I know that it's coming. I'm not all that I'm going to be, but you just hold on. This time next year, I'm going to be something special. I've already peeped it out. And God has let me see that my future is on the rise. He says, then they saw it afar off, and because they saw it in the spirit, they were persuaded that this is the way we should be going. In fact, it says Abraham left his home country, not even knowing where he was going. He left strictly on faith. And because they saw the promises and because they were persuaded by it, they embraced it. And when you have a faith, when you know that 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 God has blessed your life, that God has given you a plan, that God has given you a purpose, when you know that, you won't let nothing come between you and God. I don't understand these new age Christians who feel like we have to compromise because we want to be part of the in crowd. We're so concerned about our social status and how many friends and how many likes we have. And so we'll water down our faith and water down our belief so that we can be socially accepted by everybody. But let me tell you something. Compromise weakens your distinction. You are a peculiar people. You are a royal priesthood. And when you walk down the street, you're supposed to look different. You're not supposed to fit in with any and everything. Oh, I wish I had a praying church. I remember when my son was about 12 or 13 years old, and we was riding down the street in the car, and we saw what we thought was a woman. And we got a little close, and he said, well, Daddy, is that a man or is it a woman? I said, I don't know, son, but let me give you this advice. If you have to ask, keep on moving. You'll know the real thing when it shows up. Oh, I wish I had a praying church. If you are a real child of God, folks will know it. You ain't got to walk around with no big cross around your neck and carry no Bible under your arm. You ain't got to quote all these scriptures. All you got to do is walk a walk of faith, and folks will see Jesus in you. Oh, I'd have made some folk mad. I'm sorry. He says, now they embraced them, and then when they saw this city, when they saw the promises afar off, when they saw where they were, as opposed to where they could be, when they saw where they are, as opposed to where they're going, this is what they said. They said, we are strangers and pilgrims here on earth. Now, a stranger means I'm away from home. A pilgrim means I'm on my way home. So we are strangers and pilgrims at the same time. This world is not our home, but we do have a home. So right now we are living to leave. Are y'all with me? Now I know sometimes, and I have said this myself, sometimes in my prayer, we'll pray and we'll say, God, thank you for letting us be in the land of the living. But technically, we are in the land of the dead. You don't begin to live until you've gone through death's door. We are right now dead men walking. Every day that you rise up, we walking the mile, walking the mile, walking the green mile. I'm almost finished. He says, now we are strangers and pilgrims here on earth. He says, verse 14 says, for they that say such things, people who will say that, they are declaring plainly that they seek in a country. I'm looking for a country. And not just any country. He said that they're not just any country. And verse 14, 15, he says, for truly, if they had been mindful of the country that they came from, or that they came out of, they might have had opportunity to return. So he's saying when they say they're looking for a country, they're not looking for the country that they just left. Because if that was the country that they wanted, they could have easily turned around and went back. But we're not a people who are moving back. We're moving forward. We're going to another place. And he goes on to make it clear. He says now, but they have a desire for a better country. And he says that is a heavenly. We're not set up to stay here on earth, but we're moving towards another country, which is heaven. Heaven is our goal. Heaven is our home. Heaven is our purpose. Heaven should be our focus. Now, and I'm almost finished. When you are traveling internationally, it's a lot different than trying to travel domestically. Now, the Lord didn't hold me hostage this week, but my wife sure did. Because she was planning a trip to go to Greece. And she was excited, nervous, frustrated, all in one. And it seemed like for her, nothing could go right. And so since nothing could go right, it was my job to make it right. Husbands, that's our job. We didn't break it, but it's your job to fix it. We didn't lose it, but it's your job to find it. We didn't bend it, but it's your job to straighten it out. And so because she was nervous, it made me nervous. Now, she wasn't nervous about going on a trip, but she was nervous about leaving the country because she had never been out of the United States of America. And as I looked at her preparing for a trip, I said to myself, if she is this excited and this detailed about taking a temporary trip, I wonder could I go to J.S. Hammond and convince people to get excited about an eternal trip? About a trip that you're going on that you ain't coming back from. And so I just want to give you a few little comparisons about what went on at the Coleman house. And maybe you can implement it into your personal life as you travel and get ready, living to leave. Now, first of all, to go any place, according to verse 16, it starts with a desire. He says, but now they have a desire for a better place. And see, in order for you to get excited about going somewhere, desire must be there. Because anything you're not excited and passionate about, you won't put your all into it. And so we have to get excited about where we are going. The scripture says, if any man desire to come unto me, let him first deny himself, pick up his cross, and follow me. Are y'all praying with me? If you delight yourself in the Lord, he will grant you the desires of your heart. And so you have to have a desire to want to go to heaven. Now, when I was a boy in Atlanta Public School, Dr. Benjamin E. Mays had served as the president of the Atlanta Board of Education. In 1984, he passed away. I was a junior in high school. And so the city of Atlanta decided they would have a memorial service at what was then the Atlanta Fulton County Stadium. And all the public schools and all the kids, we got a day off, loaded on the bus and filled up the stadium to pay memorial and homage to Dr. Benjamin E. Mays. I never will forget, they gave everybody there a little pamphlet, a little book, and had his name and his picture on the front of it, and it had quotes by Dr. Benjamin E. Mays. I went home and I started reading those quotes every day until I came across this quote that he's probably most famous for, that said, I would rather go to hell by choice than to stumble into heaven following the crowd. Now, Dr. Mays was a great preacher, educator, civil rights leader, smarter than I could ever hope to be, but he lost me on that one. Because you will not stumble into heaven. And you ain't gonna get there following the crowd. Because the scripture says that there's a narrow road and a wide road. And the crowd is on the wide road. In order for you to get to heaven, you gotta have a desire and you gotta make a choice. Oh, y'all ever pray with me? I understood what he was trying to say, that make up your own mind, don't follow the crowd. I got that, but I wish he had to use a different analogy than stumbling into heaven. If you want to go to heaven, it starts with the desire. You got to want to see Jesus. You got to want to be born again. You got to want to hold up the bloodstained banner. You got to want to be set aside. I'm almost finished. So now that we have this desire, we want to take this trip. The next thing that had to be put in place is you got to get a passport. Because you can't just travel to different countries without the proper credentials. Now, a passport is a government issue certificate, if you will, that states where your citizenship is. And if you go to another place, they have to stamp your passport. And when you get back, your home country know where you've been, when you left, and when you return. Oh, y'all praying with me. Now, according to Ephesians chapter 2, verse 19, because of Christ, we are no more strangers and foreigners, but we are now fellow citizens with the saints and the household of God. How is that? See, to be a citizen, a naturalized citizen, you have to be born in that country. Well, now, when we were born in the flesh, we were born in sin, shaped in iniquity. And because we were born in sin and shaped in iniquity, it didn't qualify us to go to heaven because we were naturalized citizens of earth. But Jesus says that which is born of the flesh is flesh. But then that which is born of the spirit is spirit. So marvel not that you must be born again. So that when I was born again of the spirit, it changed my citizenship and gave me a passport that now made me fellow citizens with all the saints that have gone on before me. Preach, Coleman. Now, along with this passport and this desire to plan for a trip, there's always a cost involved. Because in order to move from one country to another, it don't come cheap. But now in order to get into a heavenly country, we needed a ticket. But the price was death. Because the wages of sin is death. But because God can't erase sin with sin, we needed a lamb that was without blemish and was without spot. And so Jesus says, well, if you want to go to heaven, I'll pay your fare. I'll die on the cross. And so we're going to heaven, not just because of Jesus died, but you ought to get excited that this is an all expense paid. It don't cost you nothing but your faith. And to show you how good God is, he gave you a measure of that. I'm almost finished. Let me deal with this passport a little bit more. Because I found out that if you are a convicted felon, you are ineligible to travel. And if you have a passport and you commit a crime, they will revoke your traveling privileges. But oh, we have a God that every time we break the law, we have an advocate with the Father who will go before us and wipe the slate clean. So when the accuser of the brother try to bring you before the council, he can't find his evidence because we've been washed in the blood and came out clean. Hammond, forgive me. I know we got visitors. I'm trying not to act crazy. I'm trying to be dignified. So I'm watching my wife pack. She goes out and buys all new suitcases. She got these little compression bags that she's putting all her outfits in. And you can get 10 outfits in one bag. And she's taking 30 outfits for a 10-day trip. And I said to myself, Lord, it's costing me more to send her than it was to pay for the trip. So she has a checklist of everything that she needs to take on this trip. I'm going on the ship, so I'm going to need some Dramamine, da-da-da-da-da. And she has this checklist. And so I'm riding her all around Fayetteville in the great state of Georgia to get everything that's on this checklist. Because she is a stickler for detail. Now, every now and then, I would see my wife pick up something, and she would say, I don't really need this. But put it in the bag. And so I said, well, baby, if you don't need it, why are you packing it? And just like a true woman, she says, well, you never know. Fellas, we need to thank God for women because they are so resourceful. They think of everything. They are always 2 steps ahead, and you don't never know what they got in that purse, but you can best believe some woman somewhere got what you need. You can walk out of here today and your battery will be dead and some woman gonna pull some jumper cables out of her purse. And if you say, why you got cables? She gonna tell you, you never know. And so the light went off. My wife taught me then I learned a lot just by studying my wife. And what I learned then was, if you stay ready, then you don't have to get ready. You see, there were 10 virgins. 5 of them were wise. but 5 were foolish. The 5 wise kept oil, kept their lamps trimmed, so that when the bridegroom came, they didn't have to get ready. They were already ready. And so what I'm trying to say to you, I don't have time to go to the club and hookah with you. I ain't got time to lay with you. I ain't got time to shuck and jive. I don't know if the Lord coming back today, but you never know. I'm almost finished. So we got a pack. Ready to go. Now, just because you packed it, don't mean you gonna take it. Because in order for you to leave, you gotta go through customs. Because some things that are allowed in this country, not allowed in that country. Now, so the last night, my wife was going to leave the next night, so I said, well, let me take you out to dinner. Let us share a meal before you leave me for the next 10 days. So we're leaving the restaurant. It's almost 10 o'clock. Everything getting ready to close. She says, take me by the pavilion. I got one more thing I need to do. We go to the pavilion, and we get out, and I said, baby, we done went over that checklist. What is it that you trying to get? She said, I need to find me a 2-piece. I know, right? I stopped in the middle of the store. And I said, 2 pieces of what? Because the only 2-piece you gonna get better come with a biscuit and a side of fries. And I went mystical right there in the pavilion. I said, you gonna make me lose my mind up in here. Meet me outside, meet me outside. So if you're packing your bag, there's some things you cannot take. Your lying tongue, your cheating heart, your double mind, your dirty hands, and your crooked walk will not pass through customs. But what you got to put in your bag is love, joy, peace, goodness, long suffering, and faith. That's how you're going to get in. Now, because my wife is a stickler, she already researched the money because they had to land in Italy and stay overnight. And so in Italy, they have euros. That's close to our dollars. Now, at this current time, the euro dollar is a little bit more powerful than the American dollar. So if you have to exchange $100, you may not get but $70 in euros. But because they don't take the weak dollar, they don't want your American money. You have to exchange it for something that is spendable in the country that you're in. Now, here's something that you have to understand. When you're packing your bag, and I know we don't like it, but you got to pack your trials and your tribulations. Because when you get to the next country, you can exchange your trials and your tribulations for some reward. Blessed are you when men shall revile you, speak all manner of evil against you, for great is your reward in heaven. So if they're talking about you, you ought to get mad, get glad. If they lying on you, get excited. Because all they're doing is fattening up your bank account. Because every lie, every trial, every tribulation, all I'm going to do is exchange it. I'm almost finished. I got to leave you here now. But are you excited about going on this trip? Do you have a desire to see a city that he said is not made by hands, but one that is prepared by God? He goes on to name all of these great saints that have come on before us. Abraham, Noah, Abel, Sarah, Jacob, and Isaac. But I stopped by to tell you this morning, he can add one more name to the list. You can put my name on that list. I don't have no desire to see the Eiffel Tower. I don't have no desire to see the Grand Canyon. But I'm living to leave this old world because I want to see Jesus. Can I get a witness here? And when the day comes, when it is time for you to board on Death Airlines, ain't God all right? They'll play a song for you when you get on Death Airlines. They let you know that it's time for me to get the wings of a morning dove and fly out of this world. And when you fly on Death Airlines, it'll take you to the old ship of Zion. And the songwriter said, the old ship of Zion, it has landed many a thousand. Ain't God all right? Is there anybody here? You got your bags packed? Are you ready? Are you ready for the coming of the Lord? If you ain't ready, go home and look at your checklist and find out, is there anything in your bag that you need to get rid of? Is there any unforgiveness that you still holding on to? You need to take it out of your bag, because I'm here to tell you it won't pass customs. The doors of the church is open.